$1 million and a crack team of engineers can build you a lot of things: a high-performance sports car, an endless supply of snacks, or a permanent residence under the sea. But sometimes all you need is a few $1,000s and a friend with a shovel. Because in the suburbs of Maryland, one man dug his own doomsday lair with just two things: determination and a friend who didn't have anywhere else to go. His name was Daniel Beckwitt, and he lived in a house like any other. Well, maybe not exactly like any other. You see, Daniel was a self-taught engineer and crypto millionaire. And if his neighbors knew anything about him, it was that he was extremely paranoid. He kept a low profile, mostly to himself, except when he would order huge amounts of PVC pipes, vacuum cleaners, and industrial fans. I think that's the third time this month he's ordered some tubes, said his neighbor in an interview. They come in these big plastic things, like bigger than my doorway. I'm wondering how he gets them inside, but none of the neighbors really cared. They saw a successful businessman minding his own business. They never imagined what was happening behind the doors of his mansion. Daniel had been stockpiling supplies for years: canned goods, water, generators, medicine. It was as though he were preparing for some kind of emergency. But he also had a more permanent solution in the works. In 2014, Daniel contacted the authorities to get permission to excavate below his property. He didn't really need it. He told them he wanted to install a geothermal system, a technology that uses the Earth's natural energy to heat and cool buildings. That sounded plausible enough, but it wasn't the whole truth. Daniel had a much bigger plan. He was digging a bunker. He started small, hiring a contractor to drill a few holes in his yard, but after that, he took over. He wanted absolute privacy, away from prying eyes and listening devices. He put ads online looking for someone to help him with manual labor, and that's where Askia Kiffer came in. Askia was 21 years old, a recent computer science graduate with dreams of launching his own startup. Daniel agreed to fund it if he helped him with the construction work, which involved digging tunnels under his house. Askia moved right in. He slept in the basement, next to the tunnels, next to the growing labyrinth of subterranean corridors and chambers. Down there, the air was thick with the smell of dirt and sometimes sewage. Water dripped from the ceiling. There was one bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were lined with PVC pipes, but Daniel promised Askia that it was all temporary. "It's gonna be beautiful down here," he told him. "You'll see. For now, though, it was a mess." And Daniel was meticulous. The tunnels had to be perfect. If there were any mistakes, they couldn't be fixed. There were no second chances, especially not 12 feet under the ground. One slip of the shovel, one wrong move, and it would all come tumbling down. Daniel gave Askia detailed instructions. Dig carefully, he told him. Don't make any mistakes. At first, Askia didn't know what to do. He had no experience in digging tunnels, but he had a can-do attitude and a degree in engineering. Plus, he desperately needed the money, so he got to work. Over the next 3 years, Daniel extended the tunnel network, installing ventilation shafts and electrical lines. He set up cameras around the house to monitor the progress and keep an eye on Askia, but as the bunker grew, so did Daniel's paranoia. He started to believe that the FBI and the NSA were watching him, that they knew about the bunker. He told Askia that he suspected the CIA had hacked into their Wi-Fi. And from then on, he disabled the Wi-Fi whenever he left the house. If Askia wanted to call his family or his friends, he had to ask Daniel for permission. Daniel was obsessed with security. He installed locks on all the doors, including the ones leading outside. And sometimes he would lock Askia in the basement overnight. "I can't sleep well anymore," he told him. "I don't feel safe." Askia sympathized, but he also hated Daniel for it. He couldn't tell anyone about his situation. He tried a few times, but Daniel caught him. He was smart, paranoid, and ruthless. Even the police couldn't get in without a warrant. and Daniel destroyed anything that might implicate him: cameras, computers, blueprints. Still, Askia dreamed of escaping, of making a run for it when Daniel wasn't looking. He thought about knocking Daniel unconscious, but Daniel carried a pistol. He slept with it under his pillow, plus Askia didn't want to hurt him. He pitied him, but Daniel wasn't always there. Sometimes he traveled. That's when Askia made his move. He escaped above ground, called the police, and told them everything. But when officers arrived, Daniel was back. They searched the house and the grounds, but they couldn't find the entrance to the tunnels. Daniel had concealed it well, and besides, they couldn't search without a warrant. So they let Daniel know they'd received a call, and that was that. Daniel doubled down on the paranoia. He brought in more supplies, chained the door from the outside, and installed motion sensors. Askia was trapped. He went back into the tunnels and begged Daniel to let him leave, but he refused. "I'm sorry," he said. "I can't let you go." "I'm sorry." After a while, Askia stopped trying. He realized there was no escape. He settled into a routine, eating canned food, exercising, and reading books. He tried to make the best of the situation. Meanwhile, Daniel kept tinkering with the bunker, convinced that the apocalypse was coming soon. But he wasn't prepared for what happened next. On September 2017, a fire broke out in the house. Flames engulfed the mansion. Thick, black smoke billowed out the windows. Neighbors watched in horror as the fire spread. Some ran to the house to try and help, but it was too late. By the time firefighters arrived, it was clear that whoever lived there had vanished. As the blaze continued to rage, firefighters discovered the entrance to the tunnels. They descended into the darkness, but it was clear that the air had become unbreathable. Smoke had seeped into every corner. They couldn't see anything. They couldn't help anyone. They returned to the surface. They were running out of options. Maybe they could pump water into the tunnels, flood them, extinguish the fire that way. But then they found his journal. It had survived the fire. Its pages outlined the entire structure, the layout of the tunnels, the location of the entrance, the layout of the house. With this map, the firefighters located the main shaft leading to the bunker. They lowered cameras into the tunnels. The images that appeared on the screen were horrifying. Twisted metal, burning wires, piles of rubble, and eventually a human figure slumped against the wall. They found Askia, Daniel's employee, dead from smoke inhalation. The news spread like wildfire. Everyone wanted to know why. Why had Daniel trapped a man in a burning building? What had led him to do such a thing? The truth was a long time in the making. Police scoured the house for clues, looking for answers. They found his computers, his blueprints, thousands of pages detailing the bunker's construction. They discovered a note he had written to himself about a week before the fire. Everything must be scorched earth. He wrote, "No prisoners," and they found another note, one he had written to his attorney. "I fear for my life. I may have to destroy the hard drives." So they pieced together the events of that fateful day. Daniel had been working late in his lab when he smelled smoke. He raced upstairs and saw that the fire was spreading. He grabbed his gun and headed downstairs. That's when he remembered the entrance to the tunnels. Panic surged through him. He couldn't let anyone find the bunker. Not the FBI, not the CIA, not anyone. So he barricaded the entrance with heavy furniture. Then he disappeared into his lab. He hoped the fire would burn itself out, that he would survive. But he underestimated the flames. They consumed the mansion. They filled the tunnels with smoke, and by the time he realized what had happened, it was too late. When firefighters found his house, he was already gone. He had vanished. His only legacy, the hollowed-out shell of his mansion, and the memory of a young man trapped in a tomb of his own making. Daniel Beckwitt was charged with involuntary manslaughter. But many felt it wasn't enough. He had shown no remorse for what he'd done. In fact, he insisted that Askia had perished in a freak accident. He said he was innocent, but in court, it was hard to argue against the evidence. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in prison. He was released in 2023. He's 69 years old now. Most people forget about Daniel and Askia's story. The bunker remains abandoned beneath the ruins, untouched since the day it burned. But there are lessons to be learned, like never trust a rich guy with a shovel. And if you're ever offered a job in a secret underground lair, make sure you read the fine print.